Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply remove someone from your life. Deleting him isn't about revenge, it's about reclaiming your peace, your energy, and your worth. When you step away fully and unapologetically, he's left to live with the consequences of his choices while you thrive beyond them. There is a type of statement that carries more weight than any argument, any confrontation, or any lengthy explanation. It's not made with words, it's made with action, with absence, with the undeniable fact that someone is no longer part of your life. Asterisk, your departure is the loudest statement you can make. Asterisk is about understanding the profound impact of simply walking away. When you leave someone behind, you don't need to justify yourself, you don't need to plead, and you don't need to explain the reasons why. Your absence alone communicates everything that words could never capture. It tells them that they no longer have access to your time, your energy, or your heart. And that realization lands with a clarity they cannot ignore. When someone has grown used to your presence, they often take it for granted. They assume that because you've been available, patient, and supportive, you always will be. They underestimate the value of your attention and the depth of your patience, mistaking your consistency for permanence. But permanence is a choice, not a guarantee. And when you finally make the conscious decision to withdraw from their life, that choice hits harder than any lecture or confrontation ever could. Your departure forces them to confront what they have been ignoring, the reality that they could lose you entirely. It's the absence that wakes them up, because suddenly the safety net they relied on no longer exists. Walking away also communicates self-respect in a way that words cannot. When you leave, you demonstrate that your value is not dependent on their recognition, approval, or presence. You show that your life does not revolve around chasing someone who doesn't reciprocate your effort. This act of autonomy speaks volumes because it is rooted in strength rather than vengeance. You are not leaving to make them suffer. You are leaving to honor your own boundaries, your own needs, and your own worth. And that distinction is what makes the statement so loud. It's powerful because it's authentic. It's not manufactured to elicit guilt. It simply exists as a reflection of the life you are choosing to live without them. Another reason departure is so impactful is that it forces reflection. When someone no longer has access to your daily presence, they are left with silence, absence, and the space to notice the patterns they once ignored. They may replay conversations in their head, revisit moments they dismissed, and suddenly see the little things they took for granted. The consistent care, the patience, the emotional availability. They begin to understand that these were not mere routines, but deliberate choices you made because you valued the connection. And once you remove yourself from the equation, they can no longer rely on you as a crutch. They are left to confront the consequences of their own actions. Departure also creates contrast. The absence of your energy, your attention, and your warmth shines a light on exactly what they have been missing. It becomes clear to them what life looks like without your influence, without your presence to soften their edges or forgive their inconsistencies. That contrast between what they had and what they are left with becomes almost impossible to ignore. They can feel it in their daily life, in the spaces you used to occupy, and in the moments where your influence was once felt, but is no longer present. Your absence speaks volumes because it cannot be dismissed or minimized. It's tangible, undeniable, and unavoidable. Finally, the beauty of departure as a statement is its permanence and its dignity. You leave not in anger, not in spite, but with clarity and composure. You step away fully without looking back, without needing validation or recognition. That is what makes it the loudest statement of all. It doesn't scream, it resonates. It doesn't demand attention, it commands respect. And in the quiet power of your absence, the person left behind realizes exactly what they lost. the presence, the care, the love, and the unwavering commitment of someone who mattered more than they ever acknowledged. Walking away is not an end, it's a revelation. Emotional detachment is one of the most underrated forms of power in relationships, yet it is also one of the most transformative. Emotional detachment is your ultimate power. Is about realizing that your worth is not dependent on someone else's attention, approval, or validation. It's about stepping back from the emotional turbulence, from the highs and lows that someone else's actions create, and reclaiming control over your own mind, your own heart, and your own life. When you detach emotionally, you stop being a participant in the chaos they generate and start being the author of your own narrative. At first, detachment can feel counterintuitive, especially when you care deeply. You've spent time investing in someone, showing up, giving love, being patient, and forgiving. You may have hoped they would meet you halfway, that they would recognize your worth, or that they would eventually step up to match your energy. But detachment is about recognizing the truth. Your effort was never enough because it was being misdirected towards someone who couldn't value it. Emotional detachment isn't about stopping love or compassion. It's about stopping dependence. It's about refusing to let your peace hinge on someone else's actions or choices. The power of detachment lies in its silent influence. When you stop reacting, stop chasing, stop waiting for explanations or apologies, you remove the emotional fuel that they were unknowingly relying on. Many people who take others for granted do so because they've been comfortable with a predictable supply of emotional energy. They assume that no matter what they do or don't do, you will remain invested. But when you emotionally detach, you interrupt that pattern. Your calm, your neutrality, and your lack of reaction speak louder than any argument ever could. It forces them to realize that the control they believed they had over you was an illusion. Detachment also allows you to see the relationship clearly. When you're emotionally entangled, your perception is often clouded by hope, fear, and desire. You excuse inconsistencies, overlook disrespect, and justify behaviors that hurt you because of attachment. But stepping back creates clarity. You can assess the dynamic for what it truly is, rather than what you wish it were. You recognize patterns, understand where the imbalance lies, and see how much energy was being invested into someone who wasn't prepared to meet you halfway. That insight is empowering because it removes the emotional fog and allows you to make decisions from a place of strength rather than reaction. Another critical aspect of detachment is the shift in your energy. When you detach, you begin to redirect your focus inward. You invest in your own growth, your passions, your friendships, and your peace. This is what makes detachment so magnetic and impactful. While they may be trying to maintain influence over you, your life continues to expand beyond their reach. They notice the difference, not through words or explanations, but through the reality that you are thriving without them. That observation alone can trigger reflection, regret, and even admiration, but importantly, it doesn't sway your inner equilibrium. Detachment is not passive, it is deliberate and active self-preservation. It communicates that your emotional state is non-negotiable and that you will no longer tolerate instability, inconsistency, or disregard. And this form of power is unmatched because it doesn't rely on confrontation, drama, or ultimatums. It is a quiet, dignified, and unwavering stand for yourself. When you detach emotionally, you not only reclaim your peace, but also shift the dynamic entirely. Suddenly, the person who once held influence over your mood and attention is left without that control, facing the reality of what they lost, while you move forward unshakable. In essence, emotional detachment is liberation. It is the ultimate power because it frees you from someone else's capacity to hurt you, manipulate you, or take you for granted. It transforms your presence from reactive to self-directed, your energy from scattered to focused, and your life from dependent to autonomous. And in that space, you are no longer defined by their choices, you are defined by your own. Rebuilding your life after someone has taken you for granted is one of the most powerful statements you can make. Rebuilding yourself highlights what he never appreciated. When someone underestimates your worth, it's rarely because they can't see it. It's often because they've grown comfortable with the love, support, and energy you consistently gave, assuming it would always be there. They stop noticing the little gestures, the emotional labor, the patience, and the care, because they believe it's effortless for you. But when you step back, redirect your focus, and start rebuilding your life, you create a reality that cannot be ignored. Your growth becomes a living testament to what he lost, revealing the depth of your value in a way that words never could. Rebuilding is not simply about filling the void he left behind. It's about reclaiming every part of yourself that was diminished while trying to fit into his world. It begins with self-reflection, identifying the areas where you compromised, where you withheld your needs, and where you allowed someone else's choices to dictate your emotional state. Once you recognize these patterns, you can start actively cultivating the version of yourself that exists outside of his influence. This might involve pursuing goals you put on hold, reconnecting with passions that define you, nurturing friendships that uplift you, or simply investing in your emotional and mental well-being. Each step in your growth highlights your resilience, your strength, and your worth, the very qualities he failed to recognize when he had the chance. As you rebuild, your transformation becomes visible in ways that are impossible for him to ignore. Confidence replaces insecurity, purpose replaces uncertainty, and joy replaces dependence. The energy you radiate reflects your internal changes, showing him that your value was never dependent on his acknowledgement. It was inherent all along. When he sees you thriving, it forces him to confront the reality of what he overlooked. Every milestone you achieve, every smile he witnesses, every moment of peace and fulfillment you display serves as a mirror to the life he failed to nurture with you. It's not meant to provoke him intentionally, but the impact is inevitable. He finally understands, through your presence and your growth, exactly what he let slip away. Rebuilding also teaches you lessons that words alone cannot convey. It reinforces your boundaries, reminding you that your time and energy are precious. It shows you that you can be whole, happy, and thriving without relying on his validation or involvement. And as you reclaim your life, he is left to grapple with the stark contrast between the person he underestimated and the empowered, self-sufficient individual you've become. The regret he experiences is not manufactured. It arises naturally from seeing the consequences of his choices. The person he once took for granted now exists in full clarity and vibrance, and that realization is both unavoidable and undeniable. Furthermore, rebuilding is about reclaiming narrative control. When you invest in yourself, you stop allowing him to define your worth or dictate your emotional state. Your life is no longer measured by his presence or approval, and that shift fundamentally alters the dynamic between you. You no longer seek his attention or validation. Instead, you cultivate your own. This autonomy highlights your strength and independence, making it clear that he was never the center of your universe. He was only a chapter. And in stepping fully into your own story, you demonstrate that what he lost was not just a person, but the stability, love, and growth that came naturally from being with someone who genuinely valued him. Ultimately, rebuilding yourself is a form of silent power. It does not require confrontation, arguments, or ultimatums. It is quiet, consistent, and undeniable. Your evolution communicates more than any words ever could, and it leaves him with a truth he cannot escape. He failed to recognize the depth of your worth, and now he is faced with a life where you thrive independently, beautifully, and unapologetically. Through rebuilding, you transform loss into empowerment, absence into clarity, and regret into undeniable proof of your value. There is a profound strength in calmness, in the quiet steadiness of someone who has chosen themselves over the chaos of a relationship that no longer serves them. Asterisk peace is your silent weapon. Asterisk is about recognizing that the most powerful reaction to someone who took you for granted is not anger, not confrontation, not trying to make them feel guilty, but cultivating a life of quiet confidence and emotional stability. Peace becomes the ultimate form of influence because it reflects self-mastery, inner clarity, and the fact that your happiness is no longer contingent on someone else's choices. It's the silent truth that hits harder than any argument ever could, because it communicates without words and commands attention without effort. When someone has underestimated or dismissed you, they often expect drama, emotional upheaval, or attempts to explain your worth. They anticipate fights, ultimatums, or displays of desperation. Peace disrupts all of that expectation. When you respond to their absence, neglect, or misbehavior with calm composure rather than panic or confrontation, you reclaim control over the narrative. You stop allowing them to dictate your emotional state, and in doing so, you reveal a level of maturity and self-respect that they likely never considered. That calm presence is both alluring and unsettling because it exposes their lack of awareness and forces them to face the consequences of their actions. Peace is powerful because it allows you to rise above reaction. When someone hurts you or lets you down, the instinct is often to retaliate emotionally, to demand explanations, or to seek validation. But choosing peace means refusing to engage in that reactive cycle. It means choosing silence over argument, composure over frustration, and confidence over desperation. In this space, your energy is no longer invested in trying to fix or explain someone else's behavior. It is invested in sustaining your own well-being. This redirection of energy doesn't just protect you, it elevates you, and that elevation becomes visible in the way you carry yourself, the way you interact with the world, and the way your presence quietly communicates strength. The quietness of peace also forces reflection in the person who took you for granted. When they can no longer provoke a reaction from you, they are left to confront the reality of your absence and the emotional calm that replaces it. They may begin to notice the small things they ignored: the patience, the loyalty, the support, and realize that these were not obligations but gifts freely given by someone they underestimated. The absence of conflict, the lack of emotional chaos, and the serenity you maintain make them see clearly what they lost. The most painful realizations are often those that arrive without drama, because they strip away excuses and reveal the truth in its purest form. Another reason peace is so potent is that it nurtures growth. While they wrestle with regret or confusion, you are building a life that is vibrant, fulfilling, and independent of their presence. You invest in relationships that uplift you, in pursuits that bring you joy, and in a sense of self that is unwavering. That visible flourishing is a constant, silent reminder of your worth, and it communicates far more than words or confrontations ever could. Every smile, every achievement, every calm moment they witness is proof that you are thriving on your own terms. Ultimately, peace is a weapon because it is inseparable from self-respect. It demonstrates that you refuse to compromise your stability or happiness for someone who did not value you, and it conveys a power that cannot be challenged or diminished. The quiet strength of your composure leaves a lasting impression, forcing the person who misjudged you to reckon with the reality of their choices. They see not only what they lost, but also the dignity, confidence, and fulfillment that comes from someone who prioritizes themselves. In this way, peace is not passive, it is active, transformative, and unforgettable. It is the ultimate way to show that walking away was not a loss for you, but a revelation for them, and that the life you are building in serenity is a testament to your undeniable worth. Moving on without looking back is one of the most profound demonstrations of self-respect and personal power. Asterisk, moving on without looking back forces him to confront regret. Asterisk. When someone has taken you for granted, the most impactful response is not confrontation, not explanations, and certainly not attempts to make them realize your value. It is to step fully into your own life, to thrive independently, and to show through your actions that your world does not revolve around their presence. By moving on with purpose and confidence, you force them to face the consequences of their choices in a way that is undeniable and lasting. The first step in this process is accepting that closure does not always come from the other person. Often, we linger in hope that they will apologize, explain, or recognize what they've lost. We wait for validation from someone who, by their actions, has already proven incapable of providing it. Moving on without looking back means reclaiming that power for yourself. You decide that your peace, growth, and happiness are more important than waiting for someone else to change. This shift from dependency to autonomy is revolutionary because it changes the energy of the relationship entirely. No longer seeking their attention or approval, you become untouchable by their actions, and your life continues to expand without their interference. Moving on also changes the lens through which they see you. When you were emotionally available, they may have assumed your love, patience, and presence were endless. They may have overlooked the effort you put in, because they expected it to continue regardless of their behavior. But when you stop engaging, stop responding, and stop seeking their recognition, the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. Your absence, your self-sufficiency, and your flourishing life become a mirror showing them exactly what they lost. And unlike confrontation, this method carries no bitterness or blame, just undeniable evidence that their choices cost them someone remarkable. This approach also shifts your internal state. Moving on without looking back is not about punishing them, it is about prioritizing yourself. It's about redirecting the energy that was once consumed by emotional investment into growth, joy, and fulfillment. You invest in your passions, your goals, and the relationships that bring genuine value to your life. This not only accelerates your personal development, but also creates a visible transformation that communicates power without words. The person who took you for granted may watch from a distance, noticing the difference between the person they underestimated and the vibrant, thriving individual you are becoming. That contrast is where regret begins to take root. Another crucial aspect is the elimination of emotional clutter. Looking back keeps you tethered to the past, to what was lost, and to what might have been. It prevents you from fully engaging with the present and building the future you deserve. When you move on completely, you clear space for new experiences, relationships, and opportunities. Your focus is no longer on him, but on yourself, your goals, your happiness, and your growth. This detachment is what makes your movement forward so powerful. It demonstrates that your life does not require his validation or participation, and it leaves him confronted with the stark truth of his own choices. Finally, moving on without looking back teaches a lasting lesson about self-worth. It communicates that love, attention, and effort are not entitlements to be taken for granted. They are gifts that can be withdrawn when unappreciated. It shows that your life and happiness are not negotiable, and that your value does not depend on anyone else's recognition. By thriving without him, You force him to reckon with the reality that he missed out on someone extraordinary. And this realization, arriving too late, is far more powerful than any confrontation could ever be, because it is rooted not in words, but in the undeniable truth of your fulfilled, independent, and radiant life. Deleting someone from your life is not an act of vengeance or pettiness. It is an ultimate expression of self-respect and emotional sovereignty. Deleting him isn't revenge, it's self-respect asterisk. Many people mistake leaving someone behind for retaliation, believing that walking away is meant to make the other person feel guilty or regretful. In reality, the power of deletion lies not in creating discomfort for them, but in reclaiming your own energy, boundaries, and peace. It is about sending a clear message to yourself and the world that your life is no longer negotiable, that your time, love, and attention are precious, and that you will not waste them on someone who failed to recognize your value. The first step in understanding this keynote is recognizing the difference between punishment and self-preservation. When you delete someone from your life, you are not seeking to harm them. You are seeking to protect yourself from further emotional depletion. All too often, people remain in relationships where their effort is undervalued, their feelings ignored, and their presence taken for granted. Every apology you accept without change, every compromise you make without reciprocity, chips away at your self-esteem. Choosing to remove that person is not about making them pay. It is about restoring balance to your own life and refusing to settle for less than you deserve. Deleting someone also serves as a boundary declaration. Boundaries are a form of self-respect. They tell others how you expect to be treated and, more importantly, how you will treat yourself. When you allow someone who consistently disrespects or underestimates you to remain in your life, you are signaling that their behavior is acceptable. Walking away sends a different message. You are no longer available for mistreatment, manipulation, or neglect. You are choosing yourself over the toxicity or indifference they brought, and that choice communicates strength and clarity in a way that words alone cannot achieve. Another profound aspect of deletion is its ability to create perspective. When someone is removed from your life, the space they occupied is no longer clouded by their influence. You begin to see the relationship as it truly was: the patterns of disregard, the moments of inconsistency, and the opportunities for connection that were squandered. This clarity allows you to internalize lessons without lingering in pain or resentment. It helps you understand your own worth more deeply and reinforces the principle that the right people will appreciate and nurture your presence rather than take it for granted. Deleting someone also reshapes your emotional energy. Instead of investing in uncertainty, arguments, or attempts to gain their recognition, your energy is redirected toward yourself, toward growth, fulfillment, and joy. This shift is not only healing but transformational. The act of prioritizing yourself over someone who undervalued you creates a magnetic sense of self-sufficiency. When they see you thriving without them, it becomes an undeniable reflection of what they lost. But the purpose is never to provoke. It is to honor your own trajectory. Finally, deleting someone is a permanent act of self-empowerment because it removes the temptation to dwell in the past. There is no turning back, no constant checking, no lingering hope for acknowledgement or apology. By removing the person completely, you close the chapter with dignity and move forward without distraction. This is what makes deletion so powerful. It is rooted in respect for yourself, not spite for them. It proves that your life is yours to live, your energy is yours to protect, and your worth is not subject to anyone else's approval. Walking away becomes a celebration of your independence, a declaration of your self-respect, and a reminder that the person who failed to value you will now live with the consequences of what they lost while you flourish beyond it. In the end, deleting him from your life isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming your power, your peace, and your worth. By stepping away with dignity, focusing on your growth, and thriving independently, you show that your value was never contingent on his recognition. He may live with regret, but you live with freedom, confidence, and the unwavering knowledge that the life you are building is far more meaningful than any past connection that failed to honor you.